All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Ricardo Martinez. I'm the CEO of Equality Texas, and I'm fed up. The fight has been nonstop for over 2 years now. In 2021, we fought to hold off the healthcare ban, and we won. In 2022, we wrestled with the governor's attacks on families who are still suffering under the cruelty of DFPS's treatment of trans kids. And in 2023, we witnessed an unprecedented number of anti-LGBTQ bills. Over 140 were filed here in Texas. Among the 7 that were signed into law, SB14 promises to cause the most harm. Young people in Texas deserve our support. They deserve to access healthcare when they need it. Our message is simple. Their parents, their doctors, and their own conscience should be the deciding factor in healthcare decisions for young Texans. Lawmakers have set a dangerous precedent. Every time the government disagrees with the decisions that you are making as a parent, they'll make that choice for you, regardless of what you think. When every major medical association has endorsed and publicly affirmed the value of healthcare for trans youth, there can only be one reason why you would ban it: to harm trans young people. Thousands of Texans showed up to the Capitol to protest and speak out against this bill. And yet lawmakers defied the will of the people to treat healthcare like a privilege only to be afforded to those who pass lawmakers' personal litmus test. It shouldn't take a judge for this state to treat trans people like Texans. It shouldn't require a team of lawyers to explain the medical benefits of healthcare. That should be implied in the name. And it shouldn't take families fleeing and hiding to wake up our fellow Texans to the crisis that our trans siblings are facing today. Every kid in this state deserves to feel protected and respected. Yet our own lawmakers have ruthlessly targeted trans kids and modeled poor behavior that is being mimicked in classrooms and offices across the state. Lawmakers should be modeling respect. Instead, we've seen them act like bullies. We've seen a dramatic increase in hate crimes committed against LGBTQIA+ people in this state in just the last couple of years. The state leaders who villainize us have blood on their hands. Their evil whispers have paved the way for violence and pain. Lawmakers have been putting us in boxes. One type fits their mold and another doesn't. They say some Texans can make their own healthcare decisions, but we can't. Some parents can care for and protect their children, but not us, not our kids, not our families. We have a message for lawmakers today. Texans are bigger than any box that you can build. We don't fit neatly into categories, and we're not trying to. Our only goal is to live as big as this state, to love as deep as our neighbors, and fight as hard as we can to stop violence against all Texans. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Klosterboer. I'm an attorney with the ACLU of Texas, along with my colleagues at Lambda Legal, ACLU National, the Transgender Law Center, and the pro bono law firm support of Scott Douglas and McConico, and Arnold and Porter. We have brought this lawsuit challenging Senate Bill 14. No transgender young person should ever have to come to court to defend their right to simply exist. No parent should ever have to sue simply for the right to provide the best quality health care for their child. No doctor or health professional should ever have to come testify simply in order to practice medicine based on science and not the cruel politics of our state legislatures. But the plaintiffs in this case this week have come together and showed up in court to present a powerful case that this law is flagrantly unconstitutional and violates some of the most fundamental freedoms that many of us as Texans hold dear. We have heard this week from world-renowned experts who reiterated what we already know, that every major medical association in the United States supports the treatment of gender dysphoria, that no country has completely banned this type of care in the way that the state of Texas is threatening to do. Texas politicians have been relentless in their assault on the rights of transgender youth, especially in the last year and a half. But transgender young people know who they are, and they're fighting back, including our client Nathan No, who testified today in court about what he knows to be true and who he is. We're bringing 3 major claims in this lawsuit. We allege and show that Texas Senate Bill 14 clearly violates the Texas Constitution. It violates every parent's fundamental right to make healthcare decisions for their children based on evidence and science. It also violates the rights of transgender young people not to be discriminated against based on sex. Senate Bill 14 is as discriminatory as it gets. This law only seeks to prohibit treatments only for transgender youth with gender dysphoria, while allowing the exact same medical care, including puberty blockers and hormones, to be prescribed to any other minor for any other reason or medical diagnosis. It is targeted and cruel and the clearest type of discrimination that a law can have. This law also violates the rights of doctors and health professionals who have a right to practice their professions based on science. This law threatens to strip away their licenses if doctors and health professionals provide this treatment that has been proven to be safe, effective, and medically necessary. Senate Bill 14 is patently unconstitutional, and we are asking the court to enter a preliminary injunction blocking this law before it takes effect on September 1st. If that happens, and if the Texas Attorney General continues to waste taxpayer dollars trying to defend this indefensible law, we are prepared to show every step of the way that this law is discriminatory and violates many of the rights that we all hold most dear. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Marti Bier, and I'm the Vice President of Programs for the Texas Freedom Network. We're a grassroots organization of more than 170,000 religious and community members, as well as young Texans who support equality and social justice. I'm also a non-binary Texan, a parent, an advocate for my transgender siblings, their loved ones, and every person in our LGBTQIA+ community. I'm also a witness to the cruelty of our state's politicians as they've callously attacked transgender youth and their families for years. First, it was the bathroom bill and the sports ban. Next came Paxton's directive asking DFPS to terrorize and fracture loving families of transgender youth. Then, of course, why we're here today, Senate Bill 14, which seeks to ban life-saving, gender-affirming care for transgender youth. SB14 has already jeopardized the lives of Texas kids and LGBTQIA+ communities by villainizing us for seeking the health care we need. Some of my dearest friends have been forced to flee our state just so their children can receive medical care. Some of my other friends still live here with their trans children. They can't leave, and they live in constant fear. This is not okay. None of this is okay. I could not be more proud to be here today in support of our legal allies and our plaintiffs who are suing the state to block SB14 from becoming law and refusing to be silent while our state politicians blatantly terrorize our families and steal our freedoms. Abbott, Paxton, and his shameless political allies have repeatedly traumatized our community to serve the political agenda of a vitriolic minority that refuses to let us live, exist, and thrive in peace. They are terrified of the beautiful, diverse, and courageous presence of transgender children and adults in our community because they know we hold the power to transform this world for the better simply by living our truths. As we live through a period in our state and nation marred by the far right's vicious attacks on our freedoms, history will remember those who fought back, while Governor Abbott and his anti-LGBTQIA+ allies in the legislature tried to erase transgender Texans. They will undoubtedly go down in the history books as fearmongers who needlessly put our children's lives at risk, but they do not represent all Texans. We cannot let them win. The Texas Freedom Network proudly supports our legal allies who are supporting our community's fight to stop one of the most egregious bans on life-saving healthcare for transgender youth in the United States. To every transgender Texan and their loved ones, I want to say this: you are loved, you belong in Texas, And we are all incredibly lucky to know you and to be in your presence.
Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lynly Egyes, spelled Lynlyegyes, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the legal director at Transgender Law Center, the largest national trans-led organization advocating for a world in which all people are free to define themselves and their futures. Today in court, we heard from Nathan No, a 16-year-old plaintiff who explained, "I feel free to live my life without having gender dysphoria weighing over me. I have that freedom, that ability, now, free to be perceived as who I am. This medicine has really saved my life." He also shared that he loves Texas and he does not want to leave. We also heard from Gina Go, another plaintiff in this case who has fought for gender-affirming care for her son Grayson. She shared with the court what many Texans are already thinking. It's insulting to take away a parent's right to care for their child. Over the last 2 days of this hearing, medical experts, trans youth, and their parents have shared what we already know. Decisions about medical care should be made by the people who know and love them, specifically by parents, medical professionals, and themselves. But that's not what's happening. Right now, we have cruel government officials and politicians who are putting trans youth's lives at risk. We know this medical care is safe and effective. We also heard from parents yesterday over and over again that this medical care is life-saving. We heard parents share how the future for their children brightened when they received the support and the medical care they needed. As with all medical care, each parent talked about the research that they did to find the right care for their child. These parents made it clear that their role is to be the best parent for their child and to keep their child safe. And for some, that means splitting up their families or traveling long distances in order to ensure that their child has access to medical care. For every parent who is anxious to hear what the future holds for their children, we want you to know we will continue to fight with you and for you. And for every trans youth out there who is listening, we see you, we love you, and we will continue to support you. And for every doctor who has been providing this life-saving treatment, thank you for all that you're doing. We hope the court grants us this injunction, and we are ready to do whatever it takes for all families to be able to thrive. Thank you.
Hello, I am Melodía Gutiérrez, and I serve as the Texas State Director for the Human Rights Campaign, and I am proud to stand here along with partners and allies today. We all had high hopes that this last legislative session would address real issues, critical issues, like fixing the electric grid and investing in education. But no, instead, our legislature made discrimination their priority. SB14 is the most harmful of the many laws they passed because it denies a small group of people, transgender youth, the ability to access best practice medically necessary care, simply because they are transgender. On many issues, success can be found through compromise, but there can be no compromise on issues of equality, civil rights, and human rights. There are not two sides, just a simple, straightforward idea that when doctors and parents agree that best practice healthcare is in a child's best interest, the legislature should not have veto power. In passing this law, Texas legislators and Governor Abbott have decided they know more than doctors about what the patients need. In fact, this bill is the opposite of what the American medical establishment recommends. In passing this law, Texas legislators and Governor Abbott have decided they know more than their parents about what their children need. And in doing so, they are trampling parents' fundamental rights. By preventing doctors from providing this care or threatening to take children away from parents who support their child in their transition, these bills harm transgender youth and their families. And bills that harm any Texan harm all Texans. But Governor Abbott and his friends at the legislature don't seem to care about the intense and real impact of passing these anti-LGBTQ+ bills. More than 100 transgender and gender nonconforming people have lost their lives to fatal violence in the past 3 years, and more than 20% of those crimes took place in Texas and Florida, the two states leading the wave of anti-transgender legislation. We cannot stand for this. We will not stand for this. This lawsuit is an important part of the fight, and we will keep fighting together. Thank you.
Hello all, thank you so much for being here. My name is Alex Sheldon, and I'm the Executive Director of GLMA, the oldest and largest association of LGBTQ+ and allied health professionals in the country. We are honored to represent, alongside of our colleagues here behind me, represent the amazing, the brave and brilliant health professionals who are providing gender-affirming care to young trans people in the state of Texas. I want to thank PFLAG and the incredible legal team that has worked tirelessly alongside us in this collaborative effort to safeguard the rights of trans Texans and their healthcare providers. Yesterday, we heard from GLMA members who spoke passionately on the stand about their trans patients, the overwhelming positive impacts that gender-affirming care has had on their lives, and the harms that SB14 would incur on them and the healthcare system in Texas as a whole. These medical experts, physicians with decades of experience providing gender-affirming care, highlighted the profound transformation that they were able to witness in their patients who access gender-affirming care. They spoke of patients who came to them hopeless and unable to envision a future for themselves under the heavy weight of gender dysphoria, who then flourished into thriving individuals after treatment. Our doctors in this case have watched trans patients transform under their care, where they used to hope for these patients to simply make it to high school alive. They now join their patients to celebrate college graduations, law school graduations, med school graduation, marriages, and all of the hallmarks of a thriving life. The impacts of this care reverberate into every aspect of their patients' lives. It is undeniable. Gender-affirming care not only saves lives, it allows those lives to flourish. GLMA members who testified in this case became doctors for one reason. They wanted to help people. They wanted to save lives. But SB14 literally robs them of the ability to do so. One physician who tragically lost a trans patient to suicide years ago testified that they swore that he would always do everything in his power to protect his patients from that same preventable fate. And he has kept that promise for years, simply by providing a proven, evidence-based treatment that is backed by every major medical association in this country. But now, with SB14 looming over Texas, he is scared and anxious for his patients. He is terrified by the prospect of being forced to abandon care for the very patients who need him most. Because he has already witnessed the worst outcome, he has already lost a patient to suicide, he believes that under SB14 he won't be able to stop it from happening again, and that is a terrifying idea to him. He and the other dedicated healthcare providers in GLMA's membership who voiced their concerns in this case recognize that SB14 prevents them from upholding their oath to do no harm and provide the highest quality care to all of their patients. Even though trans youth represent a small fraction of their patients, harming even one patient by refusing them evidence-based care is unbearable. And when they're faced with an impossible dilemma, to either endanger the lives of their patients or risk their medical licenses, these doctors will not remain here in Texas. They will go somewhere where they don't need to risk harm to even one young patient, one young Texan, because that is just one too many. Withholding proven medical treatments when a patient is in desperate need is truly torturous. These providers offer their patients safe, evidence-based care informed by their years of medical training and expertise. As we heard from GLMA doctors who testified that there is not one procedure, there is not one treatment that is currently offered to trans patients that is not also offered to cisgender patients as well. And yet that very same care would remain perfectly legal for cisgender patients under SB14. So make no mistake, our doctors are not being targeted for the type of care they provide. They are not being targeted for the quality of their care. They are being targeted because of the community they are providing care to. The consequences of this discriminatory law have already begun. Clinics are shutting down, doctors are fleeing, and the state's healthcare infrastructure is eroding. And this is just the beginning. With SB 14 in full effect, the floodgates will open and the damage will overwhelm the state's healthcare system. Without doctors, without nurses, without health professionals, you do not have a healthcare system. This will, without a doubt, negatively impact access to care for all Texans. But we have a chance to stop it now, and it is our sincere hope at GLMA and us alongside our colleagues behind me that the court will see the opportunity in front of them, the chance to preserve what is left of the healthcare system in this state, and rebuild a system that respects the right to care for all. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Bond. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm the CEO of PFLAG National. PFLAG is the first and largest organization of LGBTQ plus individuals, their parents, family, and allies across the country. We have 18 chapters here in the state of Texas, from El Paso to Beaumont, a little over 1,500 members and families as part of our network here in the state. Yesterday, one of the courageous PFLAG moms that spoke out as a plaintiff in this said, "That's my job. That's my job, to keep my kid safe." SB 14 is already terrorizing parents that just want to keep their kids safe and do the right thing so that they can survive and thrive in Texas. They want to stay in Texas. They want to be here. This is their home. Our parents, along with their medical providers, in conjunction with their kid, are doing their best every day to thrive. Should be nothing wrong with that. That should be something we want for all our kids and all of our families. Every kid, every trans kid, deserves access to necessary, science-based, gender-affirming medical care. I hear this every day from PFLAGgers across the state. That's my job, to keep my kids safe. I want to thank all my colleagues up here for everything they're doing to try to help keep these kids safe.
Hi there. Oh, it's not plugged in. All right, easier. Hi there. My name is Emmett Schelling. EMMETT SCHELLING. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm the executive director for the Transgender Education Network of Texas, or TENT. It's imperative for me to start this off to emphasize the cruelty is the point. If you hear nothing else from me today, take that away and understand that the cruelty is absolutely the point. When we live in a state where our leaders proclaim with one side of their mouth their care for children, and we see children shipped in buses to die, left in a river, and stripped of their health care, you gotta wonder, do we care about children? What children do we care about? Not the children back in my home city of Houston that are being stripped of the ability for fair and free public education access. We don't care about them. We don't care about these trans kids in terms of the leadership. And we have to face the fact that the cruelty is the point. The truth about who I am and who the rest of my community is has been distorted to a point where we have some people literally believing the idea of inclusivity is bad. We have to take a collective breath and ask ourselves, are we critically thinking through the things that we are hearing? What are we doing? You don't have to take my word for it. Go do your research. Understand that every accredited, recognized, professional medical organization also stands with us. It should not be a point of wasting taxpayer dollars on a problem that doesn't exist, but not even that, to harm Texas families and to harm children. One of the ideas that's really been pushed is if you take transition care away, trans people disappear. Sorry, not the case. Transness, my people's story, is an understanding deeply of who we are, the truth that we hold, and the courage it takes us to have to share that truth with the world simply to take a breath as ourselves. Understanding you can take my testosterone away from me, you can put me in a dress, and guess what? I'm still trans, baby. So, all we do is continue to harm our medical system, to harm literally everyone in this state. Because those doctors don't just care for trans kids. They care for kids with cancer. They care for kids with thyroid diseases. They care for kids that finding a specialist is not an easy task, and we are watching them flee from our state. We have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? Stripping an entire community of access to healthcare when the medical professional community overwhelmingly is screaming to knock it off is not what I want for my home, is not what I want for my neighbors, is not what I want for this future. We have to get to a point where when bullies continue to try to drive cruelty against people who are already being impacted in a myriad of ways simply to take a breath in the state, honestly and fully and authentically and beautifully as who we are, this is not it. Thank y'all.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions real quick, but the first one, we heard Nathan today, and I think this is the first time we hear testimony from a 16-year-old who's going through this type of care. And Nathan mentioned that their medical providers shut down their clinic, and now they haven't been able to get testosterone. I'm wondering if you've heard from medical providers about why they're closing now when the bill is expected to take effect next month, and why not stay until the last minute?
Could you step up to the mic when you answer, please? Medical providers are being targeted right now, and they're being targeted in Texas. Ooh. Medical providers are being targeted in Texas, and people are scared. Doctors are scared. We heard already about how doctors are literally fleeing this state or not even coming here. And so doctors don't want to lose their license, but they also want to be able to provide the care that they need. And so people need to do what they need to do to ensure that their licenses stay safe.
So part of it is moving away earlier or just trying to avoid these targets?
So I think part of it, some people are moving away. We definitely heard from Alex that some people are moving away. And I think other people may be scared. This isn't the first targeting of medical professionals who treat trans youth in Texas. So let's be clear about that. And so there is real fear. And I can't speak to places that are shutting down, but we know from doctors that they're scared, they're tired, and I think we even heard from someone yesterday who said not providing this care is heart-wrenching. And that's what we're seeing right now, and it's absolutely horrifying.
I'd love to.
Do you mind if I just add something really quick? The largest statewide organization that champions LGBTQIA equality here in the state of Texas, we're often the first place that people come to seek help when they're experiencing emergent situations or in desperate need of clarification for anything, right? You can't expect there to not be consequences to the dehumanization of LGBTQ people. When you start with stigma, the people who are going to be directly impacted are LGBTQ people, and stigma makes it easier for vigilantes to act independently, target our community, providers, parents of trans kids, and you can't be surprised that providers would then end care as the safest thing for themselves, right? When you're put, again, in this place of impossible choice of providing care or caring for your own safety and well-being, because we have heard of providers, of parents getting threats from these radicalized parent groups that and hate groups that exist here in Texas. If y'all go to the Southern Law Poverty Center, you'll see the list of all of the hate groups that are active here in Texas. And they feel emboldened by the bullies at the Capitol who keep putting a target on our back.
If I can ask about the state's argument that we've heard, one of the things that they've kind of been building a case for is that you can't say we're discriminating on the basis of sex because we're not talking about sex, we're talking about gender. I was just curious what your response to that argument is.
Yeah, sadly, as we heard from Emmett from Tent, this Attorney General's office, is defending every policy of state officials who are trying to divide us, to bully kids, risking people's lives in the Rio Grande. So they can come up with a lot of arguments, but that argument has been rejected by every single court that has considered these cases at the district court level. So resoundingly, this type of healthcare ban, which is brand new. So this type of healthcare has been provided for decades for all people, including transgender youth, for the treatment of gender dysphoria. Not until 2021 was when we saw the very first state try to ban this care. Since then, unfortunately, many states have tried to follow suit. It's a blatant political attack, but resoundingly, the courts have blocked those. And they have resoundingly found this to be clear and obvious gender discrimination. So I think they are trying to pretend that this has nothing to do with sex and nothing to do with gender, but all of their own witnesses are only talking about sex and gender. And so I think that argument completely falls apart.
I think too, if the judge were to rule in favor of the plaintiff, I think it's fair to assume that the Attorney General will appeal this decision. We've heard in the past the Attorney General argue that once he appeals, a stay of the judge's order will happen, and so we'll go back to status quo. I wonder if you can talk about that argument, whether it's an actual thing that he can do, and also how would you manage such a appeal and decision from the Attorney General?
Yes, I'm happy to talk about, this happened last year too. So many of the same groups have sued last year when the governor and Attorney General and the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services tried to label this life-saving evidence-based care as child abuse. We also sued here in Travis County District Court. As soon as we got a ruling, the Attorney General's office appealed, and they argued that the appeal automatically stops or stays the district court order. We then went very quickly to the appeals court to ask for what's called Rule 29.3 relief, to ask that the orders be reinstated and renewed. So we can't predict what they're going to do here. We also can't predict when or what the judge here will rule. We're asking that the court finds that this law is clearly unconstitutional and issues a temporary injunction blocking this law. If the Attorney General once again tries to waste state resources in defending what's so clearly an unconstitutional, indefensible law, we would be prepared to make these same arguments on appeal and keep fighting for the rights of transgender Texans. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.